Thousands of years ago, there were strange buildings known as kinimas, where people would gather in crowds of over 20 and touch each other and not wash their hands and spit on things. In these places, they would watch magical moving paintings made out of candlelight or something. And while most people would say, "Oh, I love Dwayne the Rock Lobster and his new movie, Help, My Son is an Android," whilst I would say, "Whoa, black bars are pretty cool," and that's the video. I'm sorry. Yep, today in my ongoing quest to alienate my potential audience, I'm talking about all of the stuff in film that absolutely no one cares about. Lucky you. And today I'm doing this for no other reason than I just think it's neat. And if you think there's going to be any overall thematic conclusion to the things I'm mentioning, well, tough luck, because this is what quarantine does to idiots like me, so you're going to sit there and listen to me talk at you about why higher frame rates look like congealed piss, and you are going to enjoy it. First and foremost though, we're going to discuss aspect ratios, i.e. the black bars on the edge of the screen. The first common aspect ratio in cinema was 4:3, and this was the standard ratio for silent films up until 1932 with the advent of talkies. 4:3 utilised most of the 35mm celluloid film reel, but when sound on film was developed, the image had to be reshaped in order to fit the sound strip on the reel between the frame and the perforations, the image itself becoming more tall than it was wide. This changed the ratio to 1.375:1, or as it would more commonly be known, the Academy ratio, after the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences standardized it as the standard film aspect ratio. This required most theaters to have to alter their projection setups, as lenses needed to be adjusted to convert the new frame size to fit their screens. This was the standard from 1932 to 1953, until widescreen formats were popularized. Now, I originally assumed that widescreen was invented in the 50s in order to compete with television, as the boxy format seemed outdated. And while this is partially true, widescreen is actually older than I suspected. Fudging with projection formats was made famous as early as 1927 with Abel Gantz's Napoleon, which famously featured an unheard of 4:1 triptych sequence at the end of the film, combining 3 Academy projections to give the illusion of widescreen. But amazingly enough, wider film reels date as far back as 1897, 1.65:1 film first being introduced with the Corbett Fitzsimmons fight, a 90-minute film reel of a boxing match, also making it the world's first feature film. Now, the reason widescreen didn't become popular until the 50s was partially due to television, but mostly because it was too expensive to develop because of... what was it again? 35mm film is just inherently cheaper to make as there's less of it and each cinema doesn't have to alter their equipment just to suit the demands of a new format. That and their money was on fire, so... whoopsie. But widescreen couldn't just be achieved through filming on 70mm or 65mm film, as anamorphic cinescope lenses were developed in the 50s so that widescreen films could be filmed on a 35mm film and artificially stretched to seem wider. They were originally developed by Henry in World War I to assist tanks in a wilder field of view and adapted for movie cameras initially in 1927 before becoming mainstream in the 50s. This was cost effective and added a decent amount of production value. Notable examples of anamorphic lenses in film are La La Land, The Thing, and Die Hard, noticeable due to prominent natural lens flares as the lens bends the light coming into the camera, unlike in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movies in which the fake lens flares were done artificially to trick the audience into thinking those films were well directed. And just because widescreen became the dominant format doesn't mean other ratios fell by the wayside. Filmmakers like Xavier Dolan, Gus Van Sant, Wes Anderson, Andrea Arnold, and Robert Eggers utilized unique aspect ratios to aid the style, time period, or themes of the films. Xavier Dolan's Mummy is shot primarily in a perfectly square 1:1 ratio, which highlights the claustrophobic environment that the protagonists live in, until a jaw-dropping moment around halfway through, in which the screen opens into 1.85, a moment of catharsis for the characters. And I'm sure I don't need to mention how the ratio changes in every new time period in Grand Budapest Hotel, because I assume everyone who's watching this has already seen it. Alternatively, Transformers 5 seemed to change aspect ratios seemingly at random for no other reason than I guess they were shooting some scenes in IMAX and other scenes in 239 and other scenes in 185, or they were just bored, I don't know. Somebody stop him, the DP's drunk again! Same with last year's Lucy in the Sky. Although that seemed to have more purpose to the aspect ratio changes, it did still jump around a lot. And you don't have to watch British television for too long to notice some advertisements have started using taller aspect ratios because... art? I don't know. The last thing I want to mention about widescreen is just a fun little anecdote. Play the jingle! Did you know that in 1982 the BBC aired 2001: A Space Odyssey without cropping the 2.2:1 aspect ratio, creating an extreme letterbox look? And to remedy this, the BBC decided in their infinite and famous wisdom to superimpose stars in the black bars. I couldn't find any images of this, so you'll just have to take my word for it. Okay, moving swiftly on to motion interpolation. I should have mentioned this video gets worse. Motion interpolation is a setting on most television sets that artificially adds frames to the screen to make the image seem more smooth and realistic. It uses a process of onboard artificial intelligence and robots and science and whatever, it looks like shit and here's why. Motion interpolation is often referred to as the soap opera effect. It has been criticised as looking like mummified dog shit as it retracts from the original look and master of the film and makes the film appear more like 60i 30 frames per second video, which is a cheaper format of filming mainly used in soap operas that doesn't look nearly as good as standardized film.
Man is a busy bee, and I got places to be.
There are some benefits to having a higher frame rate, such as another director who utilizes aspect ratios a lot, Pablo Larraín. If you look at his film No, that's filmed almost entirely in 30 frames per second video in order to aid the atmosphere of the time period that the film is set in. There's a common misunderstanding of what constitutes authentic film visuals. Filmmakers like Peter Jackson and Ang Lee seem to believe that higher frame rates create a more lifelike look to the film, but personally it just seems like a tiring exercise in innovating where it wasn't needed. That and the fact that higher frame rates are usually insusceptible to certain people like myself, so I honestly don't see the point. And I'm happy to see filmmakers like Christopher McQuarrie actively campaign against this process for the betterment of film. And while we're on the topic of frame rates, the last thing I want to talk about is region locking. And if you've ever wondered why you can't play an American DVD on a British DVD player or vice versa, then this is why. As far as I can understand, one purpose of separating DVD sales into country-specific regions is down to the differences in frame rate between NTSC and PAL, as they run on different hertz counts and require a different format to code the information properly. But supposedly it's largely down to distributors wanting to control sales within their domestic market. This not only creates demand for foreign distributors to want to buy the rights, thus building hype for the film's eventual release, but bars certain countries from having access to the film because, based on the previous demand, some films might not see the light of day. This is an incredibly frustrating system that works against the consumer, and there are so many ways to watch foreign films now and ways to counteract hardware issues that certain distributors take advantage of that I don't really see why it's still a thing. Basically, I want a DVD of Pink Flamingos, but I can't get it because the UK apparently don't want to see a drag queen eat a literal pile of dog shit like the cowards they are. So in conclusion, yeah, this video kinda went off the rails, but why not just subscribe to the channel already? So see you next time for whatever this is, and don't forget, f*** you.